We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
The 23.
Hey, what is up, you guys? This is Steffi, aka In My Humble Opinion, and welcome back to another IMHO Film Club movie review. In today's video, I am going to be reviewing Bohemian Rhapsody. So Bohemian Rhapsody stars Rami Malek, I'm probably gonna butcher this, Gwilym Lee, Ben Hardy, Joseph Mazzello, Lucy Boynton, Alan Leach, Aidan Gillen, Tom Hollander, Aaron McCusker, and a special cameo appearance by Mike Myers. The film was directed by Bryan Singer, and then Dexter Fletcher infamously stepped in when Bryan Singer was unceremoniously fired from the production, and the screenplay was written by Peter Morgan and Anthony McCartan. So Bohemian Rhapsody is basically the story of Queen and Freddie Mercury. From the moment Freddie Mercury first meets his bandmates after a show, all the way up to Queen's iconic 1985 Live Aid performance, Bohemian Rhapsody is a behind-the-curtains look at the story of Queen and a little bit of the personal life of Freddie Mercury. Now, I do think it's important before we begin for me to give you a little context of my Queen fan knowledge. I appreciate Queen and I like Queen, but I wouldn't by any means call myself like a huge Queen fan or stan, not because I don't like their music, but it's just really because I just don't know them like that. So that's the perspective that I will be coming from in this movie review. So as in all IMHO Film Club movie reviews, I'm going to be first talking about the pros and then the cons, and then I will be giving my overall rating. So let's just get right into it. Alright, so my first pro of this movie is the performance, obviously, of Rami Malek. Rami Malek, if you didn't know, is the actor who plays Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody, and he does such a phenomenal job. Everyone is talking about what an amazing job he does, but honestly, that talk is not overrated. In the scenes when Freddie was just like being himself, living his day-to-day life, to obviously Freddie on stage being this larger-than-life performer, Rami Malek really transformed 1000%. Whether or not, you know, he 100% looked like Freddie Mercury at the end of the day, for me, the reason why I felt Rami Malek did such a great job is because I felt like he just really embodied the essence of this person, and it wasn't like a put-on, obvious impersonation for a movie's sake. It really felt like he was just trying to pay homage to who Freddie was as a person in his day-to-day life and also on stage, and I just thought that he did a really phenomenal job. My second pro to this movie is the relationship between Mary Austin and Freddie Mercury. Again, I didn't really have any knowledge of Queen or Freddie Mercury's backstory up until watching this movie, so this entire story was a revelation to me. Every time Mary Austin appeared on screen, I was literally like, clutching my invisible pearls. Like, I was just like, oh my god, Mary. The relationship between Freddie Mercury and Mary Austin is just so intriguing to me, and I left with so many questions. While their relationship may have been a little complicated to define, I felt like the way that the relationship was portrayed in this movie was just so easy to understand. And I really feel like it could be summed up in a particular line that Freddie Mercury had in the movie, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but he pretty much says something along the lines of, "No one understands me better than Mary," and that was pretty much the end of that. And I feel like that was all that was needed to explain what a close bond that these two people had. And I found their relationship dynamic so interesting because Freddie is a very flamboyant person. He has a big personality, he's very opinionated, in contrast to Mary Austin, who, unlike Freddie, doesn't really like to party, and she lives a very quiet life and a relatively normal existence. And the fact that these two people were somehow able to bond on a deep level and have such a close, intimate connection was just like so interesting to me. I love that relationship dynamic. And one of my favorite scenes in this movie, like without a shadow of a doubt, was the love of my life scene. I was just like, oh god, like that entire scene was just like, whoa to me. The dialogue, amazing. Tension filled. The acting between those two, sitting on pins and needles, but I just, oh. So again, like I mentioned several times in this video already, I didn't really know much about Queen, so I definitely did not know the story of Paul Prenter and Freddie Mercury. And for me, I just felt like the way that this movie portrayed how an enabler works their way into someone's life, leeches onto them, and pretty much manipulates them into doing what they want. I found that they executed that storyline really well and in a really believable way. For me, the reason why I think they did this so well is because the buildup was so subtle. In the beginning of the movie, Paul Prenter takes the band to this like isolated country home, and in that scene, he gives Freddie Mercury the biggest room. When you're watching the movie and you don't know who Paul Prenter is, you're just like, oh, you know, he's just doing his job. Like, obviously he would give Freddie the biggest room because he's the front man. But then over time, you really begin to see how Paul Prenter tries to win over Freddie Mercury and really tries to kiss his you-know-what. Even though this idea of the enablers and leeches on these famous people, it may seem really cliche and a bit expected, and you're like, how do these people not realize what people like Paul Prenter are doing to them? After watching this movie, I was like, yeah, I could see how anyone could fall for an enabler's misdealings. My fourth pro to this movie is the way that the daring creativity of Queen was portrayed. All of the scenes that had to do with them making music, whether it was in the beginning stages of their career when they were literally like trying to swing the instruments from right to left because they were trying to manipulate how people were hearing the sounds from the right headphone to the left. I was just like, oh my god, that's so cool. It's kind of just like guerrilla music making, I guess, is what you can say they were doing back then, but I was just like, oh, this is so endearing, but so exciting and adventurous to see them attack their music in that way. And then obviously as they get more into their career, just seeing how they created Bohemian Rhapsody and them fighting for their musical creativity and seeing what great live performers they were while they were touring. I really do feel like the film did a great job in capturing how out of the box and how original Queen was. From the music to even the fashion choices that they were making back then, like, they were truly iconic. My fifth pro to this movie is obviously the Live Aid sequence. I'm not gonna lie, I had never seen Queen's Live Aid until after watching this movie, but when I went back and watched the 1985 Live Aid performance of Queen, I was just like, oh my god, they literally pretty much recreated it shot for shot. And it's incredible. Obviously, you know, Rami Malek, that is like the performance of a lifetime that he gives in this sequence. Even like the set pieces in the Live Aid sequence are just so true to what it looked like back then. I felt like I was at a Queen concert, and it made me really sad that I will never go to a Queen concert. It truly felt like I was there. It was so exciting. There was a lot of energy, and even like the audience members, when you're watching the movie, you're like, oh yeah, there's no way that everyone was like in sync, like doing this. Oh no, when you watch Live Aid 1985, everyone was in sync back then, hun. So it's just like, damn, what a time. And I just also really love too the fact that the movie just took their time in that sequence. They could have just showed 5 minutes of that performance and called it a day, but it felt like they pretty much gave us at least 10 to 15 minutes of Live Aid towards the end of that movie. And I appreciated that because since they pretty much end on Live Aid, you just really walk away with such an appreciation for Freddie Mercury and Queen's music and what great live performers they were. Alright, my first con of this movie is that this did feel like a very formulaic, palatable, family-friendly version of the story of Queen and Freddie Mercury. And the pro to that point could be that, hey, this means that more people can watch and enjoy the movie and younger people will be introduced to Queen and their music, and that's like what's really important at the end of the day, and that's great. However, the con to that point is that this is a very squeaky clean version of Queen and Freddie Mercury's story, and if you want something a bit darker and more raw and arguably more honest, maybe this movie isn't for you. This movie is pretty typical. It does a lot of things that you expect a music biopic to do. There's a lot of story beats that are hit that you will find across pretty much every single music biopic you will ever see. Alright, my second con of this movie is the pacing. The beginning felt really rushed to me. Like, we would see a sequence of Freddie meeting the band, and then like we would fast forward like a couple years later and you're like, whoa, wait, what? 15 to 20 minutes into the movie, Queen is already a successful band and they're like touring around the United States. You don't really get the sense of like, wow, they really made it. You're just like, yeah, they made it, obviously. There's like no sense of struggle of Queen really working hard to make it. Because that particular part of their career felt so rushed in the movie, you didn't really get that sense of triumph. On a more general note too, because this movie biopic covers a very long time span in Queen's career, the problem with telling any biopic in a movie format is you have so much time to cover in such a short amount of time for movies that you really skim the surface on a lot of events that happened and a lot of the dramas that took place in these people's lives. Alright, my third con of this movie is the misrepresentation in the timeline. So after watching this movie, I did read some reviews and I learned that apparently Freddie Mercury wasn't diagnosed positive until after Live Aid. And for me, I understand why the filmmakers chose to embellish the timeline in that way for narrative reasons. But you know, if a movie biopic down the line were to be made about some people that I personally like hugely stand for, like Michael Jackson or Whitney Houston, if they embellish the timeline like that, I would be a little annoyed because I would think that's kind of a misrepresentation of the way events actually happen, and it would feel like you were emotionally manipulating an audience. Like, again, I understand why they did it, but if it were me and this movie was about someone that I really stand for, I would be a little pissed. Alright, so my overall rating for this movie is a solid B+. This movie was a lot of fun to watch. I truly felt like I went to a Queen concert for like 2 hours after leaving the movie theater. And honestly, when I left, I just felt so overwhelmingly positive about Queen and Freddie Mercury, and I was just playing their music all day after watching this movie. My only gripe about this movie, however, it is a big gripe, is I just wish that this movie would have been a bit more artistically daring, considering that Queen is a band that defied convention and stereotype. So I wish the movie biopic about them would have done the same as well. I wish this movie would have taken more risks, and I think making a music biopic about Queen would have been a great opportunity to spin the music biopic conventions on its head, because this band was one of the most original out-of-the-box bands to ever exist in music history. And alright, that's about it for this video. If you liked it, please give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and please turn on the notification button down below so you know when a new video from me comes out, and comment down below your thoughts on Bohemian Rhapsody. Did you enjoy it, or did your opinions align more with the critics and you were like, meh, this movie? Also, let me know if you're a huge Queen fan or Freddie Mercury fan, because I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on this movie, because I think it's interesting to hear what a particular fan base of an artist feels about a movie biopic about them. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below. And alright, that's about it for this video. As always, everything I said was just my own personal thoughts and all my humble opinion. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!